Dean Martin was a man who seemed to have it all: the voice, the charm, and the fame that made him a household name across America. But away from the spotlight, his private life tells a much darker story, one that his children would one day reveal in heartbreaking detail. What the world saw as glamour and laughter often hid grief, sacrifice, and an unshakable tragedy that would change him forever. Early life and the rise of a legend. Dean Martin was born Dino Paul Crocetti on June 7, 1917, in Steubenville, Ohio, to Italian immigrant parents. As a child, he only spoke Italian until the age of 5, which made him the target of teasing and bullying at school. Struggling academically and socially, he dropped out at 16, never finishing high school. His father, a barber, encouraged him to pursue hairdressing, but Dino had other ideas. He took on odd jobs: a steel mill worker, a blackjack dealer, even a boxer, but none seemed to give him a real purpose. It wasn't until he began singing in small Ohio clubs that he discovered the path that would change his life. By the late 1930s, performing under the name Dino Martini, he was steadily building a career as a nightclub singer. Eventually, he refined his stage name to Dean Martin, a decision that marked the start of a lasting transformation. His charm and smooth voice caught the attention of band leader Sammy Watkins, and by 1938, Dean was touring regularly. He wasn't just a singer, he was a natural entertainer, and soon he developed the stage persona that would become his signature: the cool, laid-back man with a glass of whiskey always in hand. What audiences didn't know was that most nights the glass contained apple juice. The turning point came in 1946 when he met comedian Jerry Lewis. Together they formed one of the most successful comedy duos of the post-war era. Their chemistry was undeniable, their energy magnetic. From nightclubs to radio and then Hollywood, Martin and Lewis became national sensations. They starred in 16 films together and were regulars on the Colgate Comedy Hour, dominating American entertainment in the early 1950s. But behind the laughter, tensions were brewing. Martin grew tired of playing the straight man to Lewis's antics, and by 1956 their partnership ended in a painful and very public split. Dean Martin was forced to rebuild his identity on his own: the King of Cool and the Rat Pack. When Dean Martin stepped away from Jerry Lewis in 1956, many believed his career would fade. Instead, he reinvented himself in a way that shocked critics and solidified his legacy. Martin pursued a solo career as a singer and actor, and before long, he became one of Hollywood's most bankable stars. His easygoing crooning style produced countless hits, including That's Amore, and the song that would eventually become his anthem, Everybody Loves Somebody. In 1964, that very ballad even pushed the Beatles off the top of the charts, a rare accomplishment during the height of Beatlemania. By the late 1950s, Martin was part of a new brotherhood in Las Vegas known as the Rat Pack. Alongside Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Joey Bishop, and Peter Lawford, Dean played a central role in the group's rise to cultural dominance. They weren't just entertainers, they were symbols of indulgence, excess, and glamour. Together they starred in films like Ocean's 11 and headlined Vegas shows that defined the city's golden era. To the world, Martin seemed like the ultimate party man, a heavy drinker who never took life too seriously. But the truth was far more complicated. His children would later explain that the drunken act was largely a stage persona. The glass in his hand almost always held apple juice, not whiskey. Friends and family described him as private, even shy, preferring quiet dinners at home to late-night revelry. He was, in fact, a devoted father who made a point of being home every evening by 6 o'clock when his children were young. Still, the public persona became larger than life, and with it came both admiration and misunderstanding. Sinatra and Martin shared an especially close bond, like brothers bound by loyalty and years of performing together. Yet Dean remained the outlier of the Rat Pack, the one who often slipped out of parties early, preferring solitude to constant chaos. For all the glamour of Hollywood, he was at his happiest surrounded not by bright lights, but by his 8 children, whose presence grounded him in ways the world never saw. Family man behind the persona. While the world knew Dean Martin as the king of cool, at home he was simply Dad. Over the course of his life, Martin was married 3 times and became the father of 8 children. Despite the fame, he tried to create a sense of normalcy, a fact his children would later confirm when speaking about his private life. His first marriage was to Elizabeth Betty MacDonald in 1941. Together they had 4 children: Craig, born in 1942, Claudia in 1944, Gail in 1945, and Dina in 1948. But the pressures of a rising career and family strains took their toll, and the couple divorced in 1949. Martin gained custody of the children, and they were primarily raised by his second wife, Jeanne. That same year, Martin married Jeanne Bieger, a model who would remain his wife for 24 years. Their marriage brought 3 more children into the family: Dean Paul, born in 1951, Richie in 1953, and Gina in 1956. This blended household became the center of Martin's world. Despite his Rat Pack persona, his children remembered him as a man who made it home for dinner at 6 o'clock every evening, regardless of where he had been performing. He rarely stayed out late, preferring the comfort of family dinners to parties. His third and final marriage was to Catherine Hahn in 1973, and though it was brief, Martin adopted her daughter Sasha, completing his family of 8. Even after divorcing Catherine in 1976, Dean remained committed to caring for Sasha as one of his own. Each of his children carried pieces of his legacy. Craig pursued television production, working behind the scenes on The Dean Martin Show. Claudia appeared in films and television before moving on to a quieter life. Gail and Deanna both dabbled in music, with Deanna eventually building a successful singing career of her own, often paying tribute to her father on stage. Richie followed in his father's footsteps as a musician, while Gina married Carl Wilson of the Beach Boys. Sasha, too, tried her hand at acting. And then there was Dean Paul, the golden boy whose brilliance and tragic fate would forever change his father's life. The golden boy and the tragedy that changed everything. Among Dean Martin's 8 children, it was Dean Paul, often called Dino Jr., who seemed destined to shine the brightest. Born on November 17, 1951, to Dean and his second wife, Jean, he was gifted in ways that made him stand out even in Hollywood's spotlight. From an early age, he excelled at sports and music, earning recognition as a tennis player and later forming a rock band called Dino, Desi, and Billy with friends Desi Arnaz Jr. and Billy Hinshaw. Their youthful energy and celebrity connections made them a sensation in the mid-1960s. But Dean Paul was not content to rest on music alone. He pursued acting and in 1979 earned a Golden Globe nomination for his role in the film Players. He tried nearly everything: semi-professional football, race car driving, even pre-med studies, before ultimately discovering his true calling in aviation. In 1981, he joined the Air National Guard, where his discipline and determination earned him the respect of his peers. For his father, watching his son in uniform brought immense pride. Dean once said he would have been proud of Dean Paul no matter what career he chose, because above all else, he's a good boy. That pride turned to unthinkable grief in March 1987. At just 35 years old, Dean Paul was piloting an F-4C Phantom jet during a routine training exercise near the San Bernardino Mountains. Flying with Captain Ramon Ortiz, his plane vanished from radar and later was found to have crashed into the mountainside at nearly 400 miles per hour. Both men were killed instantly. After 6 days of searching, the wreckage was located, confirming the devastating loss. The news shattered Dean Martin. Friends like comedian Rich Little would later say that losing his golden boy was the moment something inside him died as well. Singer Paul Anka described it as a turning point, the moment when Dean's spirit dimmed beyond repair. From then on, Martin was never the same. Though he continued to smile for the public, those close to him knew the truth. His heart had been broken, and it would never fully heal. A broken heart in his final years. After the death of his eldest son in 1987, Dean Martin's world quietly collapsed. Though he had been known for decades as the King of Cool, a man who embodied ease and confidence, those closest to him saw a different figure emerge in his final years, a man hollowed out by grief. Author William Keck, who covered Martin during this time, described seeing him as a candle without a flame. Dean retreated into a life of ritual and solitude. Almost every evening he went to the same Italian restaurant in Beverly Hills, La Famiglia, where he ordered the same dish, clams casino, followed by pasta. He always wore the same outfit, navy pants and a light blue shirt, so consistently that Keck noted photographs of him looked as though they had all been taken on the same day. His ex-wife, Jeanne, often sat at a nearby table, a surreal reminder of the life they once shared. The sight of Martin alone, quietly twirling pasta as if on autopilot, spoke volumes about his unhealed wounds. Despite his sorrow, Martin remained unfailingly polite to those who recognized him. He greeted Keck with a smile each time, sometimes insisting he would return to the stage again, though in truth he knew his performing days were behind him. His health was already failing. In 1993, he was diagnosed with lung cancer, a result of years of heavy smoking, and within 2 years he chose to retire entirely. Yet it wasn't illness that defined his final chapter. It was the sense of loss that never lifted. Friends like Paul Anka and Rich Little later admitted that Dean never recovered from the crash that took his son. Though surrounded by fame, wealth, and adoring fans, he spent his last years in quiet isolation, no longer the life of the party, but a man haunted by memories. On Christmas Day, 1995, Dean Martin died at his Beverly Hills home from respiratory failure. He was 78 years old. That night, the lights on the Las Vegas Strip were dimmed in his honor, and Frank Sinatra, his lifelong friend, mourned publicly, calling Dean not just a partner in music, but a brother in spirit. Legacy through his children's eyes. Even after his passing, Dean Martin's story was not just told through records, films, or television reruns. The most revealing truths came from those who knew him best, his children. They were the ones who peeled back the polished Hollywood image and confirmed what the public had long misunderstood. To the world, Dean Martin was the reckless charmer with a drink always in hand. To his family, he was a complex, caring man who valued home and fatherhood above all. His son, Dean Paul, had once spoken candidly about the myth, saying in 1978, "If he drank as much as everyone says he does, he would be dead." The glass of whiskey on stage was more often filled with apple juice. His supposed slurred speech was an act, perfected for laughs and audience expectation. At home, he was steady, predictable, and disciplined, sitting at the dinner table at 6 o'clock sharp each evening when his children were small. Each child remembered him in their own way. Craig, the eldest, followed his father's footsteps behind the camera, producing television shows, though tragedy struck him too when he lost his wife Carol Costello only days after Dean Paul's fatal crash. Claudia pursued acting before building a quiet life in Reno, where she later passed away from breast cancer in 2001. Gail recalled babysitting for Hollywood families and growing up with Liza Minnelli as her closest friend, living in a world where Frank Sinatra was Uncle Frank. Deanna embraced performing, releasing albums that honored her father and writing a memoir titled Memories Are Made of This. Ricci carried the musical torch, writing, "That's Amore, A Son Remembers," before his untimely death in 2016. Gina, the youngest with Jean, found stability in her marriage to Carl Wilson of the Beach Boys, while Sasha, whom Dean adopted, built her own life in acting. Their voices together paint a portrait of a man far removed from the Rat Pack caricature. Dean Martin's children confirmed that behind the cool swagger stood a devoted father whose life was torn apart by grief but defined by love. His legacy endures not just in the songs that still echo today, but in the memories his children continue to share. A reminder that fame never shielded him from tragedy, nor diminished his devotion as a father. Dean Martin's life was a paradox. Dazzling success paired with heartbreaking loss. A public image of carefree indulgence masking the quiet struggles of a devoted father. His children's stories reveal a truth the world rarely saw. The King of Cool was human, vulnerable, and deeply affected by love and tragedy. From his rise with Jerry Lewis, to his bond with Sinatra, to the loss of his golden boy, his journey remains one of Hollywood's most poignant tales. What about you? Do you remember Dean Martin more for his songs, his movies, or for the heartbreaking story of his family life? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold stories of legends.